Hey everybody, welcome into the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. This is the practice report. Is brought to you by Byers Auto. That is Tim May and Spencer Holbrook. I am Austin Ward. Ryan Day, the only member of the program to speak on a Tuesday. A little bit of a change there, or a lot of a change for Ohio State to not have players and assistant coaches. Ryan Day stood up there for half an hour to answer questions almost exclusively about the defense.
Yeah.
And
there was one
he
question.
Took questions.
Yeah.
He didn't necessarily answer them all. He doesn't want to reveal some of the fixes or ways that Ohio State wants to address it, and some he has not made yet. He talked about the structure of the staff. He talked about the alignment of the defense and the scheme. He talked about the personnel.
But he gave no particulars in any of it.
No real particulars, other than he was asked specifically, after kind of dancing around it, is Kerry Combs still the defensive coordinator? And the answer to that is yes.
Yes, absolutely. So that was the real only true question he answered, because now you're wondering, so what are they doing from the standpoint of Ryan Day is going to be you got to be from a fly on the wall. He's going to be a focal point, probably sitting in the middle of these defensive meetings this week, trying to figure out, without him saying it, I'm just going on what I'm reading into it. Hey, what are the reads here? What are the keys? Why is this defense looking so discombobulated on many occasions the first two games? And number three, you hang your hat on at Ohio State defensively, stop the run first. That has not happened. The first two games has been an embarrassment to a defense that's trying to get its act together. Obviously it's number 122 in the nation last year against the pass in terms of average yards per game. Now the running game, it's kind of an abomination of what's going on. So he wants to get all of that figured out. But I think you got the indication, and Spence can elaborate on this too. Who's speaking up? Who seems to have the ideas that we should be going forth with from here? By the way, I'm talking about him talking, not me talking. And so will there be a structure change from the standpoint of hierarchy in the defensive staff? That remains to be seen. Will, for example, Kerry Combs be sent upstairs during games to better get a feel for what is and isn't working? Right. And you brought up a good question. We talked about on my podcast. But are you going to get some false reads the next couple of weeks off of that also? Because Tulsa's not exactly a running team. They played Oklahoma State really tough. And then, of course, we know what Akron is. But, wow, they do build tires there, but running game may not be exactly what they're about.
Yeah, and I think right now for this team, it should be regroup, refocus, take a deep breath, and just figure things out. I know that's easier said than done, but, you kind of just have to start from bare bones, okay, this is how it needs to be run. This is what needs to be changed. And I think right now the best thing for this defense is actually to have Ryan Day in the room. If there's one person in the world that I would choose to pick apart a defense, it's Ryan Day. And so if he can get his hands on this defense a little bit, and I know that's not what he wants to do, but in the next 2 weeks, you could roll the ball out there and score 50 points against Tulsa and Akron. The offense doesn't need attention right now. The defense does. And so if you have a mastermind who picks apart every defense he faces in there and saying, no, this is not going to work because this is what I would do against it. This is the answer you can have. I think that's the best thing right now for this defense, is to have another set of eyes from the other side of the ball that knows how to scheme against it, and then say, okay, Kerry, okay, Al, this is what you can do right now, and this is where we're going to go from here.
And a big part of the reason that Ryan Day wanted this single high safety scheme for Ohio State is because it gave him the most problems as a play caller. Okay. Well, other people have figured out how to adjust and manipulate and toy with Ohio State and get them out of alignment, out of whack, missing responsibilities, missing assignments. We've seen that. We don't have to talk about it again. Alabama did it with their passing attack. Minnesota did it with 7 offensive linemen, and Oregon did it with misdirection. There are clearly several different ways to attack what's going on here, and that doesn't mean that Ohio State can't operate a single high safety system. They did it 2 years ago. Now, we know, we've talked about this before, that there's not a Chase Young or a Jeff Okudah out there. Obviously, that helps. But Ohio State has enough very good players and coaches to get this fixed. And it's not possible, I think, for the three of us, we may have ideas to just sit here and say this is how it's going to get done, because all three areas are really wrapped up into one overarching problem.
Yeah, and as I touched on in the podcast with you, what bothered me was the first big play of the second half was not an end sweep, was not a sweep, variations on a theme. The Green Bay Packer sweep is what they ran around the left end there for 3 of their touchdowns, was right up the gut when you had your Mike linebacker just vacate the premises. You had your lone high safety vacate the premises, and all of a sudden, the worst thing in the world is to see your lone safety chasing a guy from behind. I mean, that is not a good
coming
defense.
Up 20 yards.
Well, exactly, but that's what I'm saying. They both got snookered from like their, whatever you want to call it, their reads, their keys on that play. And that's what Ryan has got to do a deep dive into. It's not necessarily what you're calling, it's what are you teaching these guys to read on a defense, because these are talented players. These are all talented guys. But when you're so out of position, like we talked about, when you've got a wide receiver guy on the edge who comes in and one play he takes out 2 players, the next play he takes out 3 players just by being in the middle of it, and Buckeyes running into each other. I'm talking about on the sweeps. Yeah. You've got a major problem on your hands. It has nothing to do with the defense that was called. It's like recognition of what's going on right in front of your face.
And it also has nothing to do, and I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but it also has nothing to do with, like, they were talking about how it was like crack and replace. It was a simple fix, crack and replace. Okay, well,
it's not simple.
But if you crack and replace, there was a guard and another offensive lineman coming around the edge that were just going to wipe those guys out. And so there has to be flow from the rest of the defense. And I think
you have to understand. You got to understand something there, though. It's not necessarily that you're going to make the tackle, whatever. It's that you're going to at least force the play back inside where the posse, or the cavalry's coming over the hill.
Exactly.
We saw Michigan get snookered like that when Curtis Samuel scored that winning touchdown. I mean, go ahead.
The biggest thing though is, like, yes, there is always a offensive scheme that can beat your defense. Joe Moorhead has figured out how to beat this defense. He is really good at what he does. And I think we do need to give some credit there, and we need to give some credit to Steve Sarkisian, who have both just called masterpieces of games against Kerry Combs' defense.
Good point.
These guys have drawn it up and figured it out and done it. And so now you start back at the beginning and say, okay, Ryan Day figured out Don Brown's defense. Michigan had to adjust. And now they think they have a defense that can hang, or a scheme that can mitigate what Ohio State can do. Ohio State has to figure out what needs to change to where the next time they see a spread style offense with talent equated, where they don't get their pants pulled down, because that's what's happened the last 2 times they've played a spread offense.
Well, yeah.
Like, that's just the simple reality.
Yeah. It's so funny.
Pantsed. I think they call it getting pantsed.
Yeah, maybe it's not amusing, but it just, the colorful language that comes out of losses when they're so rare around here.
Yeah.
And you can just you just sense, like, the mood in here. The fact that Ryan Day was the only one who spoke today at the Tuesday, press availability. There's so much on edge around here because the standards are so incredibly high. Sometimes you just have to take a moment to be like, they lost 1 game.
Yeah.
Now, it's also an opportunity, because otherwise you're running into, when we talk about 2018 or 2014, the TCU game was a precursor to what was going to happen for the rest of that year on defense. And they kept winning, and they were like, okay, everything is actually fine. And then you get the situations like Purdue, like going into a crazy dogfight with Maryland and having to fight for your life. And really it was Ohio State's defense that the College Football Playoff Committee said, you know what, we don't need this team involved. Okay, so I'm not trying to, as Berm said on Saturday, put lipstick on a pig here, but sometimes when you lose, you get the wake-up call that you need. And that did happen in 2014.
Yeah.
And so these hard conversations that they're having, I understand why Ryan Day can't sit in there 48 hours later and say, here it is, I just found the new blueprint.
Yeah.
That's going to take a lot of time.
Oh, yeah.
And it is silver lining, beneficial, however you want to look at it, that they have Tulsa and Akron and Rutgers and Maryland to work through this. Maybe people want to give more credit to those last 2 teams I named. Doesn't matter. You still have 2 or 3 weeks to really ramp things up. And they have to, because by the end of October, with Indiana and Penn State, you have no choice.
And here's the thing. Ryan Day's sitting there and he's talking to us, and I know in his head he's thinking, you know what? C.J. Stroud has thrown for, 700 yards his first 2 games. Some guy intimated maybe they should have tried another quarter. I just go, man, But anyway, you never know what people are going to ask, right? Until they ask it. But my point is,
I'm sure he was thankful for that one because it was pretty easy to answer.
Yeah, my point is he knows he has an offense he can look at it. You can watch the first 2 games and go, it's going to get better and better, because his quarterback's going to get better and better, and he's already pretty damn good.
Right.
Despite what, when one bad pass goes the wrong way, blah, 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 jerk him out of there. What a joke. But my point is, he knows he's got the goods on offense to be big-time contender. And he knows from watching Joe Moorhead snooker his defense 7 or 8 times on Saturday, not just on 3 or 4 plays, that something is very wrong in the structure. And it may not be the structure, quote, of the actual defense. It's the way it's being taught or the way it's being conveyed. And do not discount the fact that you've got all these brand new starters playing now who have never faced big time challenges like this on a consistent basis. But that's why you and I opined, well, get your like 12 or 15 best guys
and play them
and let them play three series in a row and see what's up. You know, that's the only way. Marlon Kerner talked about that on my podcast. That's the only way you get better is like you've just faced this and you come off the field and then another guy goes in at your cornerback spot. And now he's got to learn it all over himself.
If you look at the 3 and outs before you get into this, Spencer, late in the game when Ohio State made the plays they needed to defensively, well, Cameron Brown was on the field, Denzel Burke was on the field, Ronnie Hickman was on the field, Cody Simon was on the field, Taraja Mitchell was on the field, Haskell Garrett was on the field, Zach Harrison was on the field, Teron Vincent was on the field. Now Bryson Shaw was on the field, but Josh Proctor was hurt. The last one, though,
JT Tuimoloau was on the field.
Yeah.
So it's not 100% that I'm talking about. Maybe he is one of the best 11 already.
And if you look at the film, I mean, the film doesn't lie. He looked good in those last couple series, and he looked good in the little playing time he got. But none of these guys are getting a lot of playing time right now because they played 26 guys on defense. And the one thing that I think Ryan Day realizes now that he's seen it maybe at its low point for the defense, you don't get very many chances to have this special of an offense.
Exactly.
You really don't. Like
I'm saying.
Ohio State has record-breaking offenses almost every year. This offense is even better. It truly is.
Can be.
You cannot waste an offense this good with a defense that you put on the field against Oregon.
Yeah.
And so I think this program now, the people behind me, now realize that. They understand the magnitude of what this offense is capable of. Putting up 600 yards and still only getting 28 points is not acceptable, but this offense is capable of even more than that.
Well, he lamented them getting away from the running game, but like we talked about, when Verdell's goes 77 yards or whatever that was on the first, early play of the second half, and gets up 2 touchdowns, that changes everything about how you call a game, But you're exactly right. I mean, he knows he's got the goods on this side. Does he know he has the good? But you know what? Alabama was asking itself the exact same questions this time a year ago after that trip to Ole Miss.
You cannot waste an offense this good, and there has to be something done. And now he realizes that. I think Ohio State's changes are coming. Like, I don't think we can say, like, I think Ohio State's going to change. Ohio State is going to change. I'm very excited to see on Saturday what this thing looks like.
Yeah, and we'll see how quickly it connects, what all they do. If Kerry Combs goes,
they got to blitz more.
I almost think that the easiest solution, if Kerry Combs doesn't, this is just me spitballing, Tim. We don't have to open up a whole nother can of worms. There's a lot of things they could do.
Oh, yeah.
Kerry Combs, most defensive coordinators, not all, work from the booth so they can see what's going on, and they're focused only on the game and not motivating and making adjustments. If Kerry Combs wants to stay on the field, then you may see that Matt Barnes is taking control of the play calling, or Al Washington perhaps. Probably one of those 2 guys would be the solution. Al Washington.
Well, he kind of he put to bed the idea, I think, that Paul Rhodes could necessarily be elevated.
He can't. He's not allowed to have communication with the players.
Right. But you could.
But he's not.
You can get rid of this guy and hire this guy. That can always happen.
That does not appear to be. He didn't definitively say he would never.
But he sure didn't. He didn't go. Yes, I'm thinking that way.
Yeah, exactly. So I think those would be the things to watch for this weekend and next. If Kerry Combs stays on the field, then I think you might be hearing a different voice leading that defense. Now that doesn't mean we've gone through this before with offensive play calling, right? And Urban Meyer and Ryan Day and that. Like, doesn't necessarily mean it's Kerry Combs not his defense or anything like that, but just the way that they handle in-game adjustments and call plays. I don't know. That would be my theory.
Yeah.
We have a lot more shows this week to talk about that as we go along.
But it is interesting that Ryan is addressing this and is getting after it and
getting into
and is very left no
and he's
no mistake that he's perturbed that he has to do this because he named off Mark Pantoni, bring the talent in, Mickey Marotti developing him physically, and he kind of left unsaid that 600-something yards of offense should win a game and 28 points. But this group over here, headed by this guy, is not getting it done yet.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's exactly what he said. Not happy and disappointed that he has to be more involved on defense. That wasn't the way he envisioned the program being operated. That's Tim May and Spencer Holbrook. I am Austin Ward. This has been the Practice Report, and it is brought to you by Byers Auto. As always, a lot more coverage about Ohio State getting ready for Tulsa on Saturday, rebounding from the Oregon loss coming at LettermenRow.com.